The new 2026 season of Alone is underway. If past seasons were mainly about who could start out the longest, Season 13 cranks the difficulty up to World Championship level. The crew airdrops 10 elite survivalists from around the world into the Beaufort Delta, 125 miles inside the Arctic Circle. Here, no soft landing. Freezing rain, roaring winds, grizzlies, wolves, moose, and other big game can decide the winner.
Oh my god, oh my god.
On day 1, a helicopter drops 10 heavy hitters at separate survival sites. Every contestant's face glows with indescribable excitement, all secretly sure they'll be the one who wins the $500,000. The wider those grins are now, the more savage their crashes will feel later, because what awaits them is far more than just cold and hunger. The first contestant is Pedrosa, with 21 years of military service. He hits the ground running, slapping together a quick shelter almost as soon as he lands. In the Army, Pedrosa, a survival instructor in the Army, building shelters and hunting are second nature, and he can spot edible wild plants easily. Years in uniform have given him extensive survival experience, and he's even compiled his field-tested techniques into 3 published survival guides. Pedrosa's opening game is a textbook example of how to survive for real, and he refuses to miss any chance to eat. Rose hips are among nature's richest sources of vitamin C. They don't just offer a bit of sugar and moisture, they also help the body recover. That matters more with the trees he's about to drop and logs he'll haul. Each move will chew through his energy. So these rose hips are like an insurance policy for his body in advance. He hasn't even finished chewing the rose hips when a squirrel call echoes from the trees. Pedrosa scanned carefully and quickly spotted it. He drew his bow and took aim at once.
Shot the squirrel.
In a fluid motion, he released the arrow, and the squirrel fell. To be safe, Pedrosa finishes it off. An animal hit by an arrow doesn't always die at once, especially small mammals like squirrels, which are incredibly tough. Finishing them off is necessary to keep the animal from struggling and biting you. After skinning and cleaning the squirrel, Pedrosa ties the meat to a branch. I knew it. Pedrosa wasn't just here to fill his stomach. He was gearing up for a roast meat feast, even with no salt or spices. No spices, but for Pedrosa, 3 days without food, if he can skewer meat and roast it over coals. The taste is better than a fancy restaurant. While he waits for the meat to cook, Pedrosa props the Portuguese flag, because Season 13 of Alone is no longer a regular season. It's the Alone World Finals, a special edition with elite survivalists from around the world. That's why Pedrosa raised his national flag. Just as he was savoring his roasted squirrel, he heard a squirrel chattering nearby, grabbed his bow, and looked for the source.
Shoot another squirrel with my bow.
A ground squirrel nibbles at guts left from cleaning first squirrel. Back-to-back squirrels drop into his lap, and Pedrosa decides that surviving out here is this.
My start is easy.
With such an easy start, he's full of confidence about the challenges ahead. But squirrels won't sustain him. With the energy he'll burn building shelter. So Pedrosa litters the nearby woods with snare traps. This is the hunting skill he's best at. Every morning is his fixed hunting time. As expected, one of his snare traps has caught a rabbit. Pedrosa takes the rabbit off the snare. As the ceiling of small game, a rabbit can cover his energy needs for a whole day. Pedrosa skins it cleanly, and by stripping fat and drying hide, he can turn it into a pair of warm winter gloves. The squirrel he hunted yesterday has already been turned into skincare. Season 13 of Alone, inside the Arctic Circle in Canada. The climate is cold and dry. As they gear up for hibernation, squirrels pack on 40% body fat. Rubbing squirrel's subcutaneous fat on his face works for Pedrosa. Back to work. After gutting the rabbit, there isn't actually that much meat left. A 3-gene, 1.5 kilograms. Dressed rabbit only covers needs for 1 day. After processing the rabbit, Pedrosa doesn't rush to start stewing it. Instead, he grabs his bow and arrows and heads back out. More noise near camp. Another rabbit shows up by one of his snares.
Idiot strapper.
The first rabbit isn't even in the pot yet when he bags a second. In just 4 days, Pedrosa has already taken 4 animals. With today's 2 rabbits, he uses 2 different cooking methods, partly to satisfy his own taste buds and partly to help the meat last. With food briefly under control, there's still one major task waiting for Pedrosa. If he wants to survive in the brutal Arctic long enough to win, he'll need a warm shelter. After 21 years in uniform, workouts are second nature. Pedrosa slings a 50-kilo log on his shoulders and squats. Those 2 rabbits from yesterday clearly pumped up his confidence. With meat stored away, he's not constantly stressing about burning through his energy like the others. He plans to upgrade and remodel the shelter on the foundation, tidy up the shelter, and then cut down the small trees around it. Pedrosa uses stacked logs to build the shelter, stuffing the gaps between the wood directly with moss. Moss makes great insulation since it packs down tightly and is naturally waterproof. Plus, there's plenty of it right near camp. With so much on hand, it's tough to think of a better shelter material. This log and moss construction is also the most common building method on a loan. Pedrosa dreams his hand-built shelter will carry him to the finale to be crowned champion, and that by then he can welcome his brother into this little home. By the show's rules, every contestant must pick a person to visit them, and if the production team contacts them, that means they've won. Pedrosa picked his brother, and from how things look now, he just might pull this off. Being able to share this joy with his brother. After just one day of work, he's already finished 2 walls of the shelter.
Working in the shelter, really hard.
Even for a retired soldier with 21 years of service, building this shelter is exhausting, which puts into perspective how hardcore Roland in Season 7 was. Upgrading the shelter, Pedrosa jumps on every chance to hunt, but 3 arrows in a row miss the squirrels in the trees, and he starts to worry about his food. Thinking about how much more energy the shelter upgrades will cost him, Pedrosa picks up his bow again and returns to the main task of hunting. From here, fate starts to shift in silence. A squirrel shows up in a tree ahead.
I lost another arrow. And I lost all the arrows.
Pedrosa fires 2 quick shots and still doesn't drop it. Counting the failed hunt that morning, Pedrosa has now struck out twice in a row. 2 days ago, he dropped 2 squirrels and hauled in 2 rabbits, and he believed he was on a hot streak. He didn't think fate might just be running late, but it always shows up. It's as if God has slapped double odds on Pedrosa. If he wins, great, but if he blows it, he's stripped bare. 2 bad hunts back to back, and suddenly he's missing 5 arrows. The rules say each contestant can bring at most 9 arrows. If he can't get those back, he's down to just 4 broadhead arrows. Those broadheads are meant for big game. Once Pedrosa realizes those lost arrows are gone for good, he cuts a thin sapling and starts thinking about making his own arrows. While he's on the lakeshore shaving the branch, he suddenly hears an animal's roar. He turns toward the sound and, to his surprise, spots a moose drinking on the far bank. But it's yet another double odds twist from above.
But I can't kill them because it's not allowed by the hunting rules.
A mother moose is grazing by the lake with her calf. Young calves still rely on their moms to make it through. Local regulations forbid hunting cows and calves, but Pedrosa's hopes aren't crushed. He starts to realize this lake is a shot at big game. As long as he keeps working this shoreline, chances will come. The second contestant to be featured is Will, an Iñupiaq from Alaska, who grew up in the Arctic, which is his biggest edge in this challenge. Hunting and ice fishing in brutal cold are part of everyday life, but his 4 kids at home are also his biggest financial burden. He's desperate for a cash windfall to ease the strain, and that's why he signed up for a loan. Before leaving, his wife warned him not to sleep on the ground. So when we landed, he cut wood and built a raised bed to stay dry. Not for comfort. He was trying to keep his body dry, only by making sure it doesn't break down. Does he have any business still chasing that prize money out here? Dreams are fine, but when you wake up, you still have to face reality. Food is the key to surviving in this cold place. Will shoulders his bow and scouts the area to learn terrain, hoping to tag a grouse or rabbit. So much the better. In this unfamiliar environment, he misses his children intensely. It's day 2 of the competition, but the contestants already spent a month in an Arctic camp with Jim, getting used to the environment. Before the show kicked off, the crew drilled them in survival skills and using the camera gear, which is one reason they start missing their families so much so soon after the show kicks off. Reaching the lakeshore, Will notices fresh wolf tracks in the dirt. He scans the area and sees no wolves, but unexpectedly notices a duck not far out on the water. He looses 2 arrows quickly. The hit duck bolts in panic, and the last struggle on borrowed time hastens its death. The priority is to recover the arrows. Will shot 2 arrows and only got 1 back. For a hunter, this is like an EV's range anxiety. Losing an arrow in exchange for a duck still isn't enough in the long run out here. To gather the last crop of berries before autumn ends, he makes a berry picker because these unremarkable little fruits are a crucial source of vitamins and of keeping his body in working order. 2 days earlier, while hunting along the shore, Will found boards studded with rusty nails. The rules let contestants pick up and use any useful items they come across out here. Will mounts the nails he gathered onto the berry picker. But to finish this step, he still needs another tool to help. So Will makes a nail drill, mainly for boring holes in wood. Once the holes are drilled, he inserts the nails one by one to fix them in place. A comb-toothed berry rake takes shape. We'll call it an Iñupiaq berry rake, and it's no flimsy gadget he just whipped up. It's the foraging wisdom of the Iñupiaq people, passed down through life in cold lands. In short autumn, berries are food and a source of vitamins and sugar. So he has to gather as many of the last berries as possible before winter arrives. But Iñupiaq tradition shapes more of Will's life here than a berry tool. For the permanent shelter he's about to build, Will also plans to follow the Iñupiaq tradition of the turf house, a life the Iñupiaq have tested on frozen ground, and that Will is bringing into this challenge. He chooses 4 trees as shelter's corners, then lays crossbeams on top. At this stage, the square frame of the shelter is already up, and he'll postpone the outer walls and finer details for now, until he's put more food on the rack. Will won't sink too much energy into building. Just as he heads back to camp, he unexpectedly spots a grouse foraging near his shelter. When food walks right up to you, there's no reason to turn down. That bit of luck makes him forget there's a second grouse close by, but it hasn't gone far. Will picks up his bow and walks in the direction the grouse flew. The double drop fortune once favored Pedrosa, but now favors Will.
2 spruce grouse.
Will bags 2 grouse. Earlier, he was worried that not having enough food would slow shelter progress, but now worry can wait. Will skewers grouse on branches and roasts over the fire. And this land of extreme cold is welcoming an Iñupiaq man in its way. Those 2 grouse show up at the perfect moment, and with the fresh berries he's just hauled in, they give Will enough energy reserves for the shelter building work ahead. As he eats the roast grouse, he collects the bones, because in Iñupiaq tradition, bones become fishhooks, needles, and scrapers, fed by the meal.
Grouse feet, nunchucks.
Will pour his energy back into building the shelter. He works with 20-kilo logs, knowing how brutal Arctic Circle wind and snow are. Will plans a smaller, longer doorway, because in winter the real fear isn't just the cold outside, but that icy wind blasting straight into your sleeping area. A long, narrow entrance adds a buffer zone to the shelter, so that when winter sets in, the cold wind won't blast into the sleeping area, so that the warmth inside doesn't escape easily. This little design choice might be what lets him actually sleep instead of shivering awake all night. So far, the basic outline of the shelter is already in front of us. Next, he only has to sod the outside and haul the wooden bed in, and finally build a fireplace for heating. The shelter isn't fully finished yet, but Will is already very pleased with the frame he sees. Once all the details are done, this shelter, built on traditional turf house logic, might earn him a good report card. But once his hands pause, all the longing he's been pressing down floods back. Will pulls out his family photos and gazes at his wife and kids in them. And right now, Arctic cold is on its way, but loneliness has crept into his heart. The third contestant is Niro. After landing, he shows a box of camera gear weighing 30 kilograms before the competition starts. The production team first trains them in how to use this equipment. Contestants on alone endure real survival conditions. They have to film themselves. Niro's game plan is direct. His first task is to find a suitable spot and put up a temporary shelter. Since he's still unfamiliar with the area, he won't invest too much time in building a shelter at first. Down by the lake, Niro spots a dry patch of ground and chooses it for his temporary shelter. He swiftly clears the nearby branches and runs a line between 2 trees. Then he drapes a tarp over it, forming an A-frame shelter. You can stand fully upright inside. The space is quite roomy. Sitting inside, you'll stay dry even if it pours. With daylight left, Niro doesn't rest. He moves around camp, setting many snare traps. He's building a passive hunting system for himself. Traps are different from active hunting. They don't need him standing guard, as long as he's picked the spots well. When animals wander through, they might trigger a snare, like having an unseen food net already spread around camp. Even if he's lying in his shelter, these traps can keep working for him. In economic terms, these traps are what bring him his after-tax income. At first light, Niro goes to check his snares, and sure enough, one has a rabbit in it. The moment I saw that rabbit, I knew Niro's opening game was solid. The hunting system he set up yesterday has paid off. On his way back to camp, a surprise appears before his eyes.
Yes!
Niro picks up a glass bottle, something he's been wanting to find. Of 10 items alone contestants bring, the only water container is a metal pot. This glass bottle is a mobile water source for Niro. letting him put energy into exploring and hunting farther, instead of thirst tugging him all day. Back in camp, Niro butchers rabbit, skinning the hide off in one piece, then removing the organs. For contestants in the wild, these organs are not scraps to be tossed away. The liver is especially valuable. Niro starts by frying the organs in the pot, then chops the rabbit meat into small pieces and puts it into the pot to stew. One rabbit is enough to feed Niro for 2 days, giving him a hot, direct hit of nutrition. From offal to broth, he squeezes almost every bit of value out of this one rabbit. Niro gives us a textbook opening, and it's no accident. He and his wife run a wilderness survival training school. Building shelters and hunting traps comes instinctively to him. His main gap is real-world experience with large game. But Niro has spent 2 winters learning from Keelan, a contestant from Alone Season 7. Although Keelan only lasted 80 days in Season 7, her 80-day run was stunning, wowing people. As a survival instructor who has studied under Keelan, each move Niro makes feels rehearsed in his mind many times. While others try to find rhythm with the wilderness, he's already turning it into his classroom. The 4th contestant to appear is Jax. After landing, he feels the world go quiet, a mix of excitement and unfamiliarity. But Jax lets the feeling pass and quickly starts scouting for a good spot, building a shelter. As a wilderness survival instructor, Jax has taught survival skills all over the country. Besides hunting, Jax is also a botanist. No sooner had he stepped into the wild, he quickly spots a wild plant called common dog mustard. It's an edible plant rich in vitamins A and C, and for Jax, even if he can't hunt any protein, he can rely on his plant knowledge. He could still survive on a vegetarian diet for quite a long time. Jax strung up a tarp between 2 trees as a temporary shelter, and I figured he was about to show off more survival skills. But instead, Jax just laid down under the tarp, thought of his mother, and broke down in tears for missing her so much. Even more shocking, the next day, he slept straight through past 10 in the morning. And after waking up, he just lay there in the shelter with no plan at all. A downpour snapped him out of his daze and showed how flimsy his makeshift shelter was. Jax dug in his pack and noticed his fire starter was soaked. But what pushes him over the edge is finding his sleeping bag soaked.
Soaking wet! Oh my god!
In the frigid, wet Arctic Circle climate, losing your sleeping bag is like losing your last line of defense against the night cold. As Jax dug from the tent, cooled rainwater dumped on his head. Mistakes this basic really shouldn't be happening to a survival instructor. Right now, Jax is in tears, furious at his stupidity. He works in the rain to fix the tarp and hangs his sleeping bag underneath to dry. The downpour soon stops. He adds a fire pit in the shelter, trusting the fire's warmth to dry the bag. After that, Jax goes out to explore. Dandelions and other plants along the shore form a scenic strip, but he's in no mood to enjoy it. Jax wants to find an open spot near the shoreline to build a permanent shelter, when a fresh pile of bare scat catches his eye. This is not a good sign for him. And what's worse, there isn't just one pile, there are 5. Black bears use this area as a watering hole, so the idea of a permanent shore shelter is done for. Jax now has to find a viable spot farther inland. Right now, Jax is in the Beaufort Delta, the 2nd largest Arctic delta, made up of a vast wetland ecosystem with mud and sinking vegetation underfoot. This makes walking very difficult, and the terrain is far tougher than he had imagined.
This terrain.
Way more difficult beyond what I could have imagined.
Rotting logs on the ground add more obstacles to his progress, and one careless step sends him tumbling.
Oh, it hurt my shoulder.
That stumble is the final blow to Jax's resolve. The early cascade of setbacks pushes the only female contestant to the emotional edge, but she forces herself to endure pain and puts on a cheerful face for the camera. It's as if the wilderness itself refuses to accept this woman. The 5th contestant is David. The moment he arrives, he starts planning where to put his shelter and fire. The dense spruce forest here feels tailor-made for him. After a decade of heavy smoking, he instinctively chews spruce twigs he sees. Since spruce resin is antibacterial, chewing it helps fight cavities and keep enamel strong. David's survival plan is clear. Today, he must first secure a shelter and safe drinking water from the river. As a wilderness survival enthusiast, he spends time living outdoors whenever he has the chance, and he brings net weaving and hunting skills. With a decade of woodworking experience, he works spruce like second nature, dropping trees, peeling bark, and shaping logs in one motion. David plans to build an A-frame shelter, but before he has food coming in, he'll just drape a tarp over it for now, planning to strengthen the shelter later on that frame. By now, he secured the 3 basic survival needs, and from here, hunting for food becomes one of his main goals. But things go far rougher than he expected. He fires twice at grouse in a row and misses both shots.
Missed twice. No. Two very bad misses. Could be tired, could be.
At dawn next day, David goes hunting with his bow. He imitates animal calls to lure moose, a tactic used by Jordan in Season 6 and Tim in Season 11, both of whom actually called him moose and brought them down. David tries the same move because he saw moose and grizzly tracks along shore yesterday.
I thought I smelled moose. I thought I could smell moose.
And the fact that he can smell moose is largely because it's the breeding season. Bull moose cover themselves in their own urine to attract cows. That's a promising sign. David keeps trying to mimic moose calls, but it fails. No moose come in. The only plus is he spots another grouse. He draws and looses an arrow, but botches the shot again. This makes David wonder if he's already hit the limit of his hunting skills. 3 failed shots in a row not only crushes morale. The lost arrows made him anxious. For a hunter, when his arrows are gone, is the moment he's basically lost his hands. The sting of that failed hunt hit him hard, and for a time, he was at a loss, with every hunt failing. So David tried to test his luck with fishing instead, but fate's trial wasn't over. He stood casting from shore for hours, but not a single fish bit. This new fishing failure again shook his confidence. Dark thoughts kept circling in his mind, and a string of failed hunts and empty casts forced him to face reality. Real wilderness survival is far tougher than he had ever imagined. The thought of quitting had taken root, but he feared his daughter might think less. After a long inner struggle, David made up his mind and chose to quit the competition.
Hey, this is David. I am officially tapping out.
He'd gone into the wild, chasing prize money, but walked out with his heart bound to his family. He didn't fall to a bad hunt, but to the grinding despair of failure and sense that tomorrow would never come.